I thought his shirt was in Russian. I was going to go.
Look, his little portal is like, where did he go?
Zooming into nothingness.
Where did Dad go? Where is he?
If it's in Cyrillic, it's all good.
Oh, there you go.
But
he switched to analog zoom.
Dos Vidania, baby.
And I'll take a picture and ask something on the web to translate it for me.
For Homeland Security, can I go to attendee as well, please?
God, you missed all the excitement of the startup process now. A little different than it used to be. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're in YouTube watching this, you'll see a little link down below. You can actually join Zoom. If you are here as an attendee and you're wondering how all these fine people became part of the this panel, this illustrious panel, they got here early. You're welcome to come. We would love to join you. We've somehow collected, as I've said before, centuries of centuries of experience. I don't know what centuries of wisdom, but centuries of experience that we all have here, that we've spent a lot of time working on this. And if you think that you have something to add, we would love to have you join us and become part of this brain trust that is answering these questions, or at least discussing them. We start, actually, we have a meeting. If you're in the list that you're getting the emails, you'll see a link there that you can click on. We start at 5 a.m. and just kind of mill around a little bit. 6 o'clock, we start having kind of tea and coffee, and it's a little bit more organized. And then we finally get around to doing the show at 7. So there's a couple hours of warm up. You don't have to be here that early. You can, but otherwise, we start mic checks between 6:40 and 6:43. And you do have to be here by then to join the panel. So definitely be here by 6:40 Pacific Standard Time if you'd like to join the panel, and we'd love to have you. We are doing kind of a milling thing afterwards as well. So we'll post that in the link, or in Mukana, that right after the show, if people want to keep talking, they can do that as well. So it didn't happen yesterday because I had to go to production. I forgot about it. I was worried about lenses. So anyway, it will happen today. I'm going to leave a little earlier to make sure I get over to my site so I can get it launched back up again. Anyway, from 7 to 8, we have general questions, and we really depend on all of you to ask those questions. So in Mukana, asking those questions is really, really important. The whole show runs on it. And so if you have questions, general questions about media production, it can be visual effects, it can be live, it can be all those things, as well as virtual events and so on and so forth. 7 to 8 is your time. And we use a special subject each day. And so this today we're going to talk about concerts. So if you have a question specifically about how musicians can re-engage with their audience, a lot of us have been talking about that. So I figured I'd bring it all up and we'd all talk about it for a little bit. We're going to do that in the second hour today. Tomorrow we're going to talk about Zoom. Zoom has gone through a lot of changes. We're going to get everybody caught up and talk about best practices and how a lot of us are using it for events. And then on Saturday, of course, is focus on education. Sunday's general discussion. So that's kind of where we sit. If you like this and you want to share it with other people, you can. Just don't share your own link. If you do that, you'll come in as everyone will come in as you. So what you want to do is share the link that I just put into Mukana right now. And if you're not in Mukana, you'll see a link in the chat here in Zoom where you can join Mukana, which is where all of our questions are managed. All right, Bill.
Yes.
I suspect we have at least one.
We do. Actually, we have a decent group of questions, like 15 or 16 to start with this morning.
Well done for the attendees. All right, we're actually going to have a show. I know we were worried because but we're going to have a show. Okay, go ahead.
Angela Iserman of Goldens Bridge, New York, starts us this morning with, in a Zoom meeting, is there a way to move the attendees from breakout back to the main room? I know they have the leave breakout option, but is there a way that as a host to do it? Note, I could save this for Friday, but I think we all like the question today.
I actually think that all I have to do is, I think I can just select your name and just bring you back to the main room. I don't think there's anything as a host. I think I'm able to. Nope. Chris says no. Grant says no. Grant,
check with Grant.
Yeah, no, it's a funny thing with that.
So you can send someone to the breakout room, but you can't pull them back.
Correct. And if they leave a breakout room and come back into the main room, you can't now control where they go. So it's the reason that I use the main room only as a lobby, and so that's why I have a green room and stages. The green room is not the main room, because if I move someone into another breakout room, I can move them between breakout rooms easily, but I have no control. If they move themselves back into the main room, I now can't do anything. And what it says in the list is it'll have their name and it'll say not joined. It won't, and so and now I can't do anything with them. And they have to.
Are you able to
again.
keep them from going back to the main room? No. So if they just decide to go back to the main room, they're off. They're on
their own.
They're off the reservation.
They've gone rogue. They've gone.
And that's why I basically only use the main room as just to come in. A very quick hello. Sometimes I don't even say hello. I just immediately they come in. Yeah, as in
just like move you over.
I have the ding dongs turned on, the chimes, and so ding dong, someone's come in, and I just put them straight in the green room, and they just accept. Once they've accepted that, now I can drag them between rooms instantly, and they don't need to do anything, which works great because it means the green room, I can talk to them and say, okay, I'm about to put you on the stage. Bang, I'll put them on the stage, and they go instantly there.
But you can't in your system. They can't wander around and go to their own rooms. You have to assign them.
No, and I don't like people just walking onto the stage randomly in an event.
No, that's for a show. But I mean, like for our thing in the morning, I was thinking about it because we let people wander around. Although most people just stay in the room that they're in. We did, but yeah. So you don't want people to wander on stage.
That's
exactly. Right. You're only in front of 10,000 people. Okay, very good. All right, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, it's a good thing to think about because there are so many controls in the back end of Zoom about how you can configure a meeting. We're actually working on a show right now where there's 2 meetings in one webinar. One meeting is on Grant's suggestion, the stage green room setup, and it's only for the on-stage people. Another meeting is designed for attendees to be able to bounce around and look, but they're 2 totally separate meetings that have to be set up and configured separately. It's the difference between, I'm learning that the difference between a pro and somebody who isn't is how well can you really find things in the back end of Zoom.
Oh yeah.
You know, and deep. It's like, I'm always like, Grant, where is that thing? You know?
Yeah. And the buttons are hidden in different, like I every time I want to, because I'm constantly changing what I force people to upgrade to, you know, like what version of Zoom I force them to upgrade to. And I always have to remember where that is because it's a different set of settings. It's like the account settings or whatever. It's not, like you have to go, there is because there's like 3 places that you can change settings in Zoom. Anyway, we'll talk more about that on Friday. Next question.
Moving along to Paul Wallace of Austin, Texas, who's here in the panel. Zoom Rooms is not yet showing up as an app on my Portal Plus. Do I need to do an update to get it to show up as an app? I have the regular Zoom app.
Go ahead, Guy.
If you're logged in with a WhatsApp account, I'm finding that the Zoom app does not appear as something that you can download. So if you're logged in as a Facebook user, it'll appear. But if you do not log in as a Facebook user, you do not get the Zoom app. And it's only on the Portal Plus. It is not on the Portal TV. So I know, Paul, that you have a Portal TV as well. It's not out yet for the Portal TV.
Well, this is on the Portal Plus, Guy. And is it 2 separate apps on the Portal Plus? Or is it just one Zoom app?
Just one app.
And just one app. Okay, got you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next question. And we'll move through Zoom questions pretty quickly, knowing that we're going to talk about it a lot tomorrow. So if you ask me a Zoom question, we'll answer it, but it'll be quick. All right, next question.
Moving on to Larry Jacobson of Cheyenne, Wyoming, who says several Macs in the house, 2017 iMac, a 2020 MacBook Pro from Intel, a 2016 MacBook Pro. I ordered a Brio and want to be able to adjust it. Will my current webcam settings app work, or is there a better software to adjust zoom, color, temperature, and so forth?
I have leaned towards webcam settings myself. There's also manual camera, which the nice thing about manual camera is that it shows a preview while you're working on it. So you don't have to be in the app when you turn it on. So manual camera is kind of nice that way. For some reason, I find that it is not quite as stable for some webcams, although I think they're equally good with the Brio specifically, because the Brio has a really good support for third-party control. I don't think you're gonna have any trouble with any of those. In fact, you have to, as a reminder for Mac users who have anything that was after, I think 2018, I believe, if you turn on webcam settings or manual camera on a Mac after, and I can't remember what year it is, your main webcam on your computer will turn gray. It's a security feature, and you will not be able to turn it back on until you restart the computer. so if you want to control, one of the big problems now is that we can't, if the color's off on an internal camera on a Mac, you're kind of, it's just going to be what it is. So that's why we've completely standardized on not letting any of our participants be on the internal camera. We send them a camera, we recommend it. We don't not let them, but we warn them that they're going to not look as good as everybody else. So having some kind of external camera will give you that. And the only two cameras that we use at this point are the C920s and the Brios. C920 is a little less expensive. Now available on B&H. I got some update. Now it won't be because I just talked about it. So so they send me an email, like, just in case you're wondering, there's 920s are available. I don't know why they would think that I would need a 920, but anyway, so we bought 10. Anyway, so the but I think that if you're doing, the main distinction, by the way, for 920s and Brios for us is primarily if you want to zoom in. I think that the quality that ends up on Zoom looks the same between the two, but you don't have the control to zoom in and move around a little bit. So that's the main thing you want to think about with the Brio. No one else raising their hand. So next question.
Moving along, we have Chris Russo of Red Hook, New York. Once again about Zoom rooms. While logged into a webinar through a Zoom room, the displays are outputting active speaker view. I do not see a setting to change this in the controller or the web settings. Does anyone else have the same experience?
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is how you control what is on which display. And I know that there is a setting. I had a hard time finding it yesterday.
You have you have to go into rooms, your Zoom room, your administration for rooms, and you select those rooms. And then for that room, you can define a whole bunch of different ways that it treats 1, 2, or 3 monitors. It says, this is what.
And also 1, 2, or 3 participants. So if there's 3 people in the room and you have 3 monitors, this is how I will lay it out. Yeah. If there's 2 people in the room and 3 monitors, this is, I'm sure Guy has something to add.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, first I think he's just talking about pinning somebody. So I'll show you both. But first, here's what it looks like on the controller. To pin somebody, it's participants. And then, like, if I wanted to pin Bill, I would just click on Bill, and then I get this little pin video. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's so in the controller, go to participants, click on the participant, and then pin video, and that person will now get a pin, and that will display on a screen. If you have multiple displays, it would say, which do you want to pin him to, 1, 2, or 3? Now on the back end, if you want to control how this is done, it's actually a device. You got to create a device profile here, and then once you create that device profile, you can choose. Oh, that one's already exists. Let me do create device profile test 2, and now you can see that you have this other. This is the important one right here, where it says display. Click on that, and it'll ask you, what do you want to do with this when you have 2 displays, 3 displays, and you can choose when you have a display. Do you want shared content, local room share? What do you want to appear on these displays? Me, background image, or other. So this is where you do it though. It's in the back end in Zoom rooms, create a device profile, click display.
So Guy, if you select me, what do you select on the monitors if you want to have the ability to just pin a participant but never get a screen share?
I put other.
Other, okay.
Yeah. And the reality for most of us doing these, or if you're cutting them into video, Zoom rooms is the thing that you want to learn how to use because it just gives you so much power, and it's definitely worth it. All right, next question.
Moving on to Rachel Ann Clifton. How do you handle shiny objects flaring back into video recordings? For example, automobile hoods, stainless appliances, and so forth. Thank you.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Filtration and iris. There's a couple of filters that will knock off the highest or sharpest edges, but they reduce the sharpness. things like low contrast or digicon, what have you, they're also used to bring the blacks up a little bit because they scatter light within the filter. There are arguments that they sort of work like an amplifier for the dark stuff, but I don't believe it. The other is just close down the iris and look at the curves that your camera can do. If you've got a Panasonic DSLR, you can adjust the curve of the response for the shadows or the highlights, and you can roll them off as well. A lot of DSLRs will allow that, whereas in cinema cameras, you do it in post.
Go ahead, Sky, and then Mickey, and then Bill. Relatively quickly.
Yes, there's a spray that you can use that you de-shine.
Dulling spray.
Dulling spray.
Dulling spray. Thank you. That's it. And I don't know where you would get it. Talcum powder has been used in the past. Just to
Hairspray does that as well, Sky, but you've got to have a lot of it. And on cars, you're not going to have a classic car owner liking you one little bit if you do that.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, assuming you're locked into your frame and you're not allowed to move the camera, change your frame, I would change the position of the shiny object, or if you're using artificial lighting, adjust the position of that so that the reflection doesn't directly go back into the lens, or flag it out with a flag, a cutter.
I mean, one thing the thing that you'll hear someone say constantly around a lot of these things is angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. So, you get very good a lot of times at setting these things up. I can look at a scene and I look at where the lights are, and I'll just look down and I know where that light is probably going to bounce. And so you just kind of changing the lights, because especially on a curved surface, changing the lights only a little bit or a flat surface, sometimes a couple inches will get it out of the reflection. So you just have to know that that very small changes can fix something a lot faster than dulling spray or filters or anything else. Is just moving the light source. The hardest light source, of course, to move is the sun. It's very difficult. It takes a lot of people, a lot of infrastructure. You lose a lot of pieces. And so the sun is difficult, but moving the object underneath it can be sometimes doable. Bill, and then Grant.
Yeah, misspend some of your early days playing pool, because that'll teach you the angle of incidence and the angle of reflection as easy as anything else. Also, that's why you often get grip trucks on a big set, because they will have flags, which Mickey talked about, which are really a solid thing that does not let light pass through it. And if you can have bigger, smaller flags, and you pick the right size one and get it at exactly the right angle, you can knock a reflection out that way.
Go ahead, Grant.
I heard about a network television show that bought a full-size grand piano, a Yamaha, beautiful, shiny black. And 10 minutes before their show, they got scourers out and scratched the whole surface of it to soften it all up. So piano lovers, everywhere were crying.
I can imagine. We have one of those on our stage right now. I can't imagine what would happen if we even made one scratch on it as opposed to lots of them. All right, next question.
Moving along to Wendy from Virginia, and Wendy asked, VA Maryland. I'm sorry. Anyway. Good morning, everyone. Quick question: does anyone know if I can do polls in a Zoom meeting for breakout rooms or in breakout rooms, and if so, how is this done?
Everyone's looking at Grant. Can they do can we do polls in the breakout rooms? I don't know.
I don't know. I've just turned on another meeting. I'm just looking at at a breakout room. It's all they've actually increased the functionality they have in breakout rooms. And so sometimes I'll say, no, you can't do that. And then they'll have turned it on. And one of those things was recording. You couldn't record in a breakout room, and now you can, albeit only locally. But they're increasing all of those, screen share you couldn't do before, and now you can. And so I'm reluctant to say, no, you can't do that. But I haven't seen the poll option there. I'll have a quick look now. I'll turn a room on and have a look.
I'm just waiting for when we get, my question is, when are we going to get breakout rooms inside the breakout rooms? You think I'm joking, but
breakout suburb.
Inception.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next question.
Moving along to Guy Cochran of the panel here. Guy asks specifically, NDI-HX Camera App for Android released today. What Android devices have a decent camera that are worth talking about?
Good, Stuart.
I have to ask, Guy, is that from NewTek or Sierra?
It is from NewTek, and it is actually up to 4K. The reason I bring it up is I had a camera like years ago. This little guy right here that runs on Android with a 12x optical zoom, and it got discontinued. The crazy thing was it had a SIM card and you could edit video on this thing. And I actually used it at NAB once to quickly, very quickly get a video up on YouTube. I mean, I shot it, and while I was walking back to our booth, I had a video up on YouTube. It was uploading from the time I shot it with the person. Actually, you can see it. Let me see. It was the video on the Blackmagic Pocket. So this was shot on that camera way back then. And this intro was done in After Effects, but then cut in real time. So this was 7 years ago that you could do this kind of thing. So now with NDI being on a camera, so this is in the Blackmagic booth, but I literally edited this, shot it, edited it, and then uploaded it while walking 7 years ago via LT.
So young.
Anyways, so 12x zoom. I'm wondering what else do we got that is similar to what was out 7 years ago in the Android world.
I think that what happened was in a lot of ways that photograph, imaging took over. Like I think that it's not there yet, but the problem is that Apple and other folks closed the gap so quickly with the phone sensors that everybody who tried to put one of those things out, DxO did their own little camera. I have a couple of them sitting in my garage. And other folks tried to augment the camera, but the problem was it couldn't distinguish itself enough to be able to charge enough money for something that is a different form factor. And I think that seemed to be what people had trouble with. It was better. The DxO one is still a 1-inch sensor, better low light, looks great. But they just couldn't, not enough people could see the difference. The average person that would buy it. Jeffrey?
I think the bigger thing with this NDI-HX thing is just the idea of what kind of phone it is, what version of Android it's running, and more than just the camera. Whereas in iOS, it's very, exactly what's inside of the device. That any type of phone would be different from thing here. Like for instance, I'm playing with the YOLO Box Live right now, and that's an Android device. Will it be able to put NDI on it? I don't know yet, because it might not have that right electronic chip in there to do that. So so it'd be nice to actually have cameras that do NDI natively through Android apps. We'll see what happens.
Next question.
Moving on to Stuart Fairweather from the panel here in Melbourne, Australia. Does Chrome on macOS have issues accessing webcams and mics directly? Tried getting StreamYard to work tonight. The PC was easy as can be. Mac, no joy. He's on Yosemite 10.10 and a 2012 Mac Mini server.
I think it's Yosemite.
Yeah, I have to point out that I'm stuck on Yosemite for recording RAW from the Scion, so I can't change that because it's the only version of Mac OS that AJA's Cam Exchange works on.
I think the problem is you're not moving your feet fast enough while you're saying yabba dabba doo. It's a really old platform there. I don't know. I mean, I get that you need it for what you're doing. I think that your compatibility issues with the webcam have to do with the age of the OS. I think it probably can't even see the new drivers. I mean, the new stuff that's built in inside of the modern Chrome. So I do think that a mixture of Yosemite, what Chrome has to shift down to get to it. You're talking about stuff that was added after Yosemite existed, and Yosemite doesn't even know it's there. So I think that WebRTC didn't exist in 2012, like in any real form. So I think that's the problem is that Chrome. Now, were you able to do it with any other browser?
I didn't try with anything else. Apparently, StreamYard prefers Chrome on the PC. It worked fine, but experimenting with the Mac, it just didn't want to see it. I'm not familiar enough with Macs to know where those sorts of settings are.
Go back and see if it works with Netscape Navigator.
Oh, that's rough. So I would try it actually with Firefox. Just try Firefox. It may actually be a little bit more forgiving. Jeffrey, real quick.
I had an issue with Chrome earlier on where it would not change out the camera, and this was actually Windows and Mac. And I found that other software that was loaded on the machine was the problem. Do an audit of your machine, see what software you have on there, any other video software that might be taking over that video camera, and try and uninstall it, see what happens there.
Nothing was running at the time. That device only has OBS, Resolve, and now the NDI drivers that were updated today. But yeah, I know it's old one and it's probably pushing it for that. We didn't cover something with Guy's question, which was which other Android devices can actually work on it, because I would love to know that too.
Yeah, isn't the Google phone, isn't the camera on that really good? Anybody have one of those? Or are we all
The
iPhone
Pixel 3,
users?
I've heard that the Pixel 3 is having some problems with the NDI app. Other than that, anything that's been put out in the last year should run pretty well.
I just don't know enough about Android cameras to answer. Like I don't have any input to them. Next question.
Moving on to Bo Cordell of Charleston, South Carolina. I know that there's a large preference for Zoom among this group, but I've had a client request for a production using Microsoft Teams. Is it feasible to get 5 to 6 ISOs out of Teams into an external switcher using the NDI capabilities?
Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, we tested this. Greg Gibson and Jeff Widgren and a couple of us jumped in a Teams meeting when we first heard about this, and what was happening was 1 and 2 we were getting 720p. Once we started adding more people, it started dropping down resolutions, so we kind of gave up on it. But yesterday I was in a webinar with Polycom, and they're saying that you can now bring people in through their system from a Teams meeting into Zoom. And I guess, have you heard of that, Grant, where you can bring people from Teams with their third-party app? They said it's coming to Zoom. Zoom's announced that they'll be able to do it in the future, but Poly says they could do it now, which is crazy.
It's just a SIP, connection, I guess they're using.
Yep.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, one thing I would say, like, if you are seriously gonna use NDI for, like, especially larger scale productions, like, one or two contributors, that you can do that fairly easily. But if you're gonna scale it up to more than that, you really should read the white papers of NDI from YouTube. So because it could be, it's used in in productions, but you just need to know how to properly use it, like what kind of switches you need and the kind of bandwidth that you need to have available in your network, your internal network.
Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, Sky, on the Microsoft gig that you guys did with the TriCaster, was that it was all laptops pinning each individual, so you're pinning each person to suck up into the TriCaster, but was that NDI or was that SDI?
It was all SDI. Yeah, we went through disseminators, and so that we had originally we were having surfaces, but I mean we tried to use Mac laptops, and that kind of failed, so we ended up using surfaces out HDMI into a converter into the TriCaster.
Yeah, the only way we've Teams in the past has been individual computers. We do it with the hardware is completely separate, so we do the cross connects. We basically rebuild the conversation in hardware and then output it out, and that's just makes it work. So I mean, obviously that's the harder route. So but if you do all the mix minuses and send back returns to individual computers, and then build that out, it's a little bit of work, but it's super stable. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So yeah, it looks like Zoom put out an article last week about this, where you can bring in. It looks like you have to start the Teams, and then that'll then start the Zoom room or meeting or whatever, and it'll bring it into the Zoom account right there. So, and they say it's for pro business and education, and there's an API for it. So,
I mean, I will say that I think that the only competitor to Zoom is Teams. Like at this point, I don't think anybody else. I mean, Meet maybe somewhere in the future if Google can figure out how to make it usable. I mean, it's easy to use and turn on, but it's just that they stripped it out. What's crazy is Google had all the tools. They took them all out. So like it just anyway. So but I think Microsoft's probably moving faster than everybody else, other than Zoom. I still think that Zoom's velocity is higher than Microsoft, so they're not gaining ground. I think that, but they're the closest ones. It's like two runners running faster. One's still pulling away, but the rest of the pack is so far back you can't get them in the same camera shot. So I think that it's the two of them that are kind of running down that path right now. It's worth paying attention to Teams because of their nature of being very corporate and whatever. I think that they're going to have a hard time in the long run, because Zoom is just what everybody, like my parents use Zoom. And that is it's going to be a really hard thing for people to kind of get over as the whole thing kind of settles in. But Teams is probably I would say, the second best solution right now. Sky, and then Scott.
So my opinion is, yes, you'll have an enterprise and a civilian solution, and Microsoft very much owns the enterprise space and or the corporate space. Then there's the rest of the humanity, and that's where Zoom has really filled in that hole. The
interesting thing that I'm going to be fascinated by is to see, the impact. It's the enterprise space that uses Microsoft Office. Like that is where Teams owns it. The enterprise space that doesn't use Microsoft Office all uses Zoom. I think that and I will say, just for us to keep track of it, we need to track what's happening with Apple's M1 chip, because it's going to there's no value proposition for PCs, even at the salesperson level, has just been eliminated. Any CFO who's paying attention to how much money it costs to get a certain level of performance, if they really look at it and don't necessarily listen to their IT staff that wants to do a PC, the cost performance will be higher. And so there's a whole bunch of pieces to that. Yeah. The other thing to keep watching long term is the impact of USDZ, and when it ends up in the Office apps, which the Apple's Office apps, Pages and Keynote and so on and so forth. You're going to have people doing presentations where they're rotating 3D objects around seamlessly in their presentations. And that is really going to be hard for people with, other platforms to if they don't get up to that, it's going to be hard to compete.
To Guy's point too, the homogenization of the the desktop OS and the mobile OS, once that gets homogenized within the Apple, it's just like, so I think that there's a really, we're in an exciting time in the Chinese curse sort of way, where a lot of things are kind of moving very, very fast, and I'm unclear, what the leader is in the enterprise area 10 years from now. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, the only other place I was going to say to look at this is the standards community. You can clearly see all these other tools like GoMeetMe and other meeting toolkits. They're throwing them away. It's Teams and a little bit of Zoom. Yeah, all these other tools are gone. You're right. Yeah. It's a two-horse race. It's Zoom. It's Teams.
And you see this. You see like a whole bunch of people build railroads, and then it ends up being a couple. And I think everybody's building them. I think that with the right product manager and $1 billion or $2 billion, Meet could possibly be something that could be competitive, but it would take someone that could decisively change its complete pathway to make it useful.
It's amazing what a little bit of equity and capital can do.
Yeah, but I think I think that Meet's the only one that could possibly pull it up. The rest of them are gone.
And I'm with you. Meet could have been great, but they pulled it apart and
they just stripped it down.
Together.
And to Scott's point too, Microsoft is not the big. Well, anyway, the new CEO is a much different animal than the previous regimes, and so it's becoming much more consumer friendly as a service, not as a.
Teams will never be a consumer tool. No, it'll be an enterprise tool. It's never going to make it. They're never going to make the turn.
It's a cultural shift.
I know that they're optimistic, but it's never going to happen. They should stick to what their core skill set is. I mean, they're outclassed. I don't care what Microsoft, who the CEO is, they're outclassed by Zoom in that area, and they're just not going to be able to make that turn. Anyway, next question.
Moving along, Bobby Rafferty in Maryland has this question. Can the panel recommend some studio headphones in a range of price options from the least to the most expensive?
Go ahead, Bill.
So I think you have to start with this. What are you listening to? If you are a music producer in that kind of studio environment, what matters to you most is full spectrum of sound with no compromises. If you're one of us video folks who shoot a lot in the field, I don't want that. And that's why for decades now, I bought only Sony 7506s, because they have a little presence peak in the middle of the voice range. And when I'm monitoring somebody in the field on microphone, that is my favorite thing about them. I wouldn't listen to symphonies on them all day long, but as a tool for that job, I find them extraordinary. So what are you listening to? And that's going to determine the kind of cans that you want to go out and bring into your life.
Go ahead, Jason, and then Victor, and then Jeff.
All right, so these are AKG K271 MK2s. It's a closed back headphone, and as you can see, it's ginormous and looks ridiculous. I could do this 20 more times, but I'll spare everybody. These are about, I don't know, what, $150? And as far as I'm concerned, they sound fantastic. Also, the one that Victor's going to show you are great, and I'm sure Mickey's got an awesome set. But yeah, you shouldn't need to spend any more than $200, I'd say, as long as you got a good preamp.
And those AKGs are the kind of, I don't know how many we own. I want to say 240. Are those 240s, or are they?
The 240s are the lighter semi-open. These are a little bit heavier in their closed back, but basically they're identical.
I mean, the AKG 240s, we bought them by the bushel for our crews.
Me too.
You know, as kind of a standard, like, I wouldn't say they're the nicest ones. They're ones that are solidly good for the price that we paid. Go ahead, Victor, and then Jeff, and then Mickey.
Biodynamic DT770 Pros, I'll give you only the perspective of a music mixer. I want things to be fairly not colored. I want to be able to wear these things all day and not have fatigue, or try not to have fatigue. So your question is very loaded to what Bill said.
And how much are those?
These are $159 right now, regularly $299 list.
Right.
And I'll put a link in the corner.
And what's the model number?
It is the DT770 Pro 80. That's 80 ohm version. They have a couple of different versions, so you need to be aware of what kind of preamp you're using with your headphone so that you get the right match for the headphone. Again, pretty complex subject, actually.
Jeff, and then Mickey.
So the first question is closed back or open back. So if you're going to be in a noisy environment, or you're going to use these for tracking musicians where you don't want to have the click bleed out into your microphones, then you need closed back. And I'm with Bill. I have somewhere about a dozen pairs of the Sony 7506. And I have mixed symphonies on these when I'm in a noisy environment. And that's all, I need to keep the outside sound out. If I'm in a quiet environment, I love the Sennheiser HD 650s. These are upwards of $350, open-backed headphones.
Mickey?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Sennheiser HD 280s. Like, those are one of the classics you'll see in a lot of studios. HD 280s, and also as Victor mentioned, the DT 7070 is also something that's a staple. But yeah, you have to keep in mind what impedance you get for if you have a high-powered headphone amp. You want to go with the 250 ohm, because that will give you more resolution in terms of the detail. Though it's very hard to drive. And others that I like are the Audio-Technica M50X and also the M70 as well. But if I need like sort of a magnifying glass kind of headphones where I really want to hear all the detail, I go with the 7506s, the Sony 7506s. But they do tend to get a bit fatiguing after like an entire day listening to them. But they are very, very detailed. It's not flat, but you will hear every single noise.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it's second. The 7506s, those are everywhere. Less known in the US, but more around the world. Is the form factor is the same as these ones, but it's the Sennheiser HD 25-1-2s. Those are amazing. Those are what I usually have walking around with. And they have velour pads that come in the case, and swap out to those, and they're just comfortable to wear. And they have the little unique spin up on the side, so you can have them on, but then spin up one ear real quick, and then leave one ear open while you're in production. So that's the reason why I like the HD 25-1-2s. But those are like $200 to $250 maybe. So twice the price of the 7506s.
Go ahead, Sky. You look like you're about to show us something.
I do. I have the Bose, and again, these were a trade, and they are the noise canceling that you normally see people have in airplanes. I don't. I mean, I have the standard $80 Sony pack, but these are pretty amazing, and they're Bluetooth, and they have a microphone built into them. So, feature, whatever.
Go ahead, Jeff, and then Raphael, and then we'll move on.
If you want to go super high-end open ear headphones, go with Stax electrostatic, but you're talking $3,000 to $4,000 because it comes with its own preamp driver.
That is awesome.
They're the opposite of a condenser microphone. So they are electrostatic plates on the side of your head.
Love that. All right, Raphael.
Okay, these are DT240 from Biodynamic. They are closed back headphones, 34 ohms, and they go for 60 some euros at Thomann.
That's great. So there's a full range of from 68 euros to $4,000, and I think those are. If you pick one of those, you just got to decide, how much you want to spend. That's great. Thanks, guys. Next question.
Moving on, Alan Scott from New Brunswick, Canada. In webcam settings, what does Gamma do, and what is the best setting for it? Who wants to explain Gamma?
Go ahead, Jason, and then Stuart.
I'll start by saying there is absolutely no best setting. It's going to depend very heavily on your luminance value. I'll let Sky take this one. I don't think I can be succinct about Gamma.
Go ahead, Stuart, and then Sky.
I was going to make similar comments to Jason, but the thing with webcams is you're never going to get a good setting with it. Leave it at the factory setting.
Well, I think that the issue is that with a webcam settings, you want to be less worried about what it says and more about what it looks like, because none of those numbers mean anything. Like they're all just blah, like what you have to do is look at it and specifically look at it through the platform that you're going to use. So for instance, to get back to Gamma, the Gamma in Zoom is different than the Gamma in QuickTime. So if you open up QuickTime and preview it, it's going to look brighter. And when you get into Zoom, it's going to look punchier. And that is the Gamma that is being adjusted. They're interpreting your video differently. So when you do that final correction for your webcam, you really want to go through the platform that you're going to use, and you may make adjustmants for every platform. Like I change how I look if I'm going into Blue Jeans versus Zoom versus, they all look different. And fortunately, that's why, for instance, I really like having an ATEM switcher and a camera that can hear it, because I sit there and I pop up on my switcher and I look at, like you'll see in the first part of a meeting, you'll see my color and my stuff go like this, because I'm sitting there going and just pulling it all into where I want it to be, in a meeting, because I'm just adjusting to that platform, so you just have to know that they're not all going to be the same. And typically it's an exposure thing and less of a color thing, but you can find that some will punch your color, some will punch, contrast, some will, Blue Jeans reduces your contrast. So there's a bunch, because it does this kind of backlighting thing where it tries to make everybody look brighter. And so there's a bunch of different processing that goes on. So you really want to be conscious to your platform that you're going to use it in. Sky, and then Bill, and then we'll move on.
And in the early days of QuickTime, when we were delivering files, we would look at something, it'd look amazing on a Macintosh, and then the Windows operating system didn't understand how to use it, and we would have to start getting critiques from the end client after looking at it on a Windows system. It was a pretty horrible experience, and things looked so oversaturated. So there was, I don't know if they fixed that, but then the conundrum between, at least in a QuickTime file.
Well, the problem is now, especially with HD, you end up in a situation, or not HD, but HDR. QuickTime on the Mac will interpret your PQ, and YouTube, for instance, won't. So you can open up a video that you just exported and it looks great, and then you upload it to YouTube and it looks like it was poured through coffee. And so
and that's why scopes. You got to have scopes.
Well, you have to have scopes, and you just have to have. You have to, again, never trust anything that you're putting up. You have to get it up there and look at it in a couple different places to make sure that it's right. But Apple is doing a lot right now with interpreting HDR footage, and so so it makes it so you don't know what everyone else is going to see, because it's not flat. It's not a flat response. It's like we're going to make it look good on your monitor. And Big Sur has taken a huge jump in that. The Gamma and the contrast on Big Sur as an operating system is different than everything else. And so,
and that's why the Dolby factor is the end to end. solution that hopefully we can
exactly
answer some of that
slowly.
Yeah.
Even though the end-to-end is still a work in progress. Go ahead, Bill.
To really super simplify it, the gamma control on your screen really controls the brightness of the mid-tone values in a video signal. It doesn't touch the highlights, doesn't touch the shadows. It should be that area in the middle between those two. Now, everybody's going to be able to set that differently. So you may have a wide mid-tone value or a narrow, which is why this gets so variable. But that's what you're doing when you're moving the gamma control, is brightening or darkening the mid values in your video signal.
Good. Jason, and then Scott.
Yeah, and to that end, I mean, it's probably easier for you to see if I just start sweeping gamma. You're going to see exactly why there is no such thing as like the universally correct gamma, because this is going to vary a whole bunch. And yeah, it basically is mid-tone contrast.
And it's why also when you're streaming, so when we're doing large events, we'll have 6 to 8, sometimes as many as 10 or 12 devices opened. And when we're doing our tests, when we're doing our process, we have Android and Windows and different versions of Windows and different browsers. And, so you might have 3 or 4 Macs and 3 or 4 Windows and a whole bunch of, a couple different Android devices with different browsers. And you have them all up on a desk and you're looking at, especially when you're testing, hopefully not during the event. I mean, you have them open for the event, but you want to be looking at how the color looks there. And then, to be honest with you, you're deciding what's your core audience? Where are they going to be? And what compromises do you make so it looks good? But it's never going to look the same on, there used to be NTSC, never the same color. But in this case, it's gotten even worse, where it's there's no, it's wild, wild west when it comes to color. Go ahead, Scott.
Go.
Yeah, originally gamma was there to correct for the nonlinearity in the world of CRTs. Well, the problem is we're not using CRTs anymore. We're using LEDs, we're using OLEDs, etc. Some of that nonlinearity doesn't exist anymore, but we're still trying to correct for it. And you've just hit on the real problem, Alex. We've got a world of things where everybody's interpreting gamma significantly differently on their displays. So the way I do it here, I've got a 4K Sony OLED in front of me. You might be sitting in front of a Mac. Other guys might be sitting in front of different types of LEDs. They're all interpreting differently. However you're going to create your gamma is what Jason was just doing a minute ago by doing a slider. That's an entirely mathematical interpretation of what the camera is trying to do and trying to generate an output signal that's supposed to be originally an electrical impulse created to create an amount of electron energy going to phosphor on a screen. The math doesn't necessarily work anymore. And specifically, we start looking at HDR right now, where we've got different curves that are trying to interpret whether what we're creating for what is scene light versus what is display light. It's a mess and it's going to get worse. So what Alex said is, when you're shooting something, have multiple devices up that you're trying to display on, go, who's watching the most? Try to aim for that and try to do the least damage you can in multiple areas. Yeah. But you are going to inevitably probably have somebody go, man, it looked really washed out on this device.
Yeah.
Dolby Vision is probably the right way to go to solve this problem. Apple's great because they've adopted Dolby Vision. The problem, and you'll hear me rail about this forever, which Dolby Vision, but that's a different problem.
Yeah, well, and I think that for us, and for me right now, when I know this will sound crazy, but when I calibrate a monitor, what I'm using as reference is often my iPad or my iPhone, because Apple spent a lot of time, when I'm trying to get a monitor to look the way I think it should look for HDR specifically, I open those up because Apple spent a lot of time getting that right. And so I just want the monitor to look like that. So all my settings are all figured out to that so that I can get it, because the most accurate color monitor that I have at this point is my phone for color. It's like, when you turn off all the settings and you turn it all on, I have found my iPhone is the cleanest, the most accurate that I can easily get. I mean, you can definitely get a monitor with a specialist and have them, build it all out and everything else. But my walking around, this is a clean signal and I know what it looks like is my phone.
Yeah. And not very many of us walk around with a color chart anymore.
I do.
I have one here somewhere. I think I have one in a desk somewhere over here.
I have one. I have the little Chroma Demon, like the little chart with the focus and everything else.
Yeah.
I carry that
within reach.
I know, but that's not the same. That's not.
I just cleaned up my office, Jason. I've lost everything.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next question.
Moving along, we're at Doug Ferguson from the panel in Fort Wayne, Indiana. For clients who keep moving the goalpost, which has worked better for folks? Do the work, then send an invoice and explain that when ordering extras off the menu, it's going to cost more, then do the work?
So the way I do it, I tend to try to take into account when I give a quote. Now this is hard. When I give a quote, I try to take into account all the things that they could want. And I tend to try to include some of those in my quote. So I go the opposite way than most people do. And I work with large corporate clients where changing the quote is really upsetting. You know, they have to go back and ask for money. They have to reallocate it. They would rather me charge more, bid more. Like I just came in, I just did a job where I'm going to come in, you know, a lot under. That's much better for them than for me to go in a lot over. So I'm going to come back and give them back money from the quote saying, hey, I didn't spend it all. Here's, you know, like tens of thousands of dollars back, you know, and so because I don't, you know, or, you know, you can either not charge for it or they can keep it as a credit or they can do a bunch of other things, but you're better off coming in at the end underneath it. Now it's hard because you work with folks that don't get that. And then they, especially when they haven't worked with you before, that they'll, you know, when you bid heavy, but I bid heavy to take into account all the things, because what I don't want them to do during the show is have to make those decisions in real time and have to get approval for them in real time, is a really painful, it creates a lot of upset. So me being able to just say, oh yeah, we can do that. Oh yeah, we can do that. Oh, we can do that. Inside of, I'm quietly figuring that out. And then also it's why I don't like line item bids, because a lot of times I'll look at something and go, I can save money on the hotels and then I can spend it on the lenses, or I can add another camera and quietly fix things. And so there's a lot of like, if you have a flexible client, you can do that. But the problem with line items is that they tie you down. You know, like you can't. It actually doesn't serve they think, you know, clients think that serves them. It doesn't, because what you want is someone, if you can trust them, what you want is someone who's constantly figuring out how to, you know, borrow from one budget and add to another to make the right to customize the event for what it actually turned out to be, not what you quoted, because a lot of times, you know, the map is not the territory. And so you have to kind of think through that. Again, I tend to bid heavy and come in under as opposed to bidding light. Some people call it getting the job pregnant, which is that you get into the job and you get it working, and then you start adding more detail to it, and it gets to be really expensive. That's super stressful for a client. You know, like it is a really stressful experience for them. And if they find someone who doesn't do it that way, they won't come back. You know, like because it just creates all kinds of chaos for them. Now, if they're a little company, they'll think that that's the way it should be or whatever. But if they're a big corporation, changing their bids is a way to not make friends. You know, like, you know, and they're gonna, you know, so it's that's the, you know, you really want to bid into it thinking through those things. And I have lots of extra stuff. I bid into it knowing that I'm going to bring extra gear. I'm going to bring sometimes extra people, extra things. Like I have like extra built into my quote. You know, and I know that's hard for a lot of people you're triple bidding or you're competing with other people. But what you want to get known for is that you get it done, not that you did it cheaply, you know, and that's you got to build towards that. Even if you're taking a hit at the beginning, you got to, you know, people will end up, the most expensive part of a live event is failure. And Bill and then Nikki.
I should try to explain here. This is not bidding on something. This is actually changing. Like we have a contract that I just looked up today because this request came in last night, that it's the deliverables that is changing. So
I just come back and say, hey, that's great. This is how much this costs. Like, but I definitely have that conversation in email. I don't necessarily run a change order, but I just go, you know, you added a jib, you know, is it okay? It's going to cost $2,000 more to do that. Do you want that? And I have, you know, email. The big thing is email trails of having those conversations with them. But I would definitely in real time outline for them that is going to be an extra $300 or an extra $2,000 or an extra whatever. Is that okay? And then they'll say yes or no. But yeah, to your point, if they're really changing something that's clearly a change from what you quoted on a long time ago, it's just a matter. But you definitely don't want to surprise them with it later.
Yeah, and the requests are going back several years. Like, hey, I need this now from a project we did 2 years ago, and it's different than what we already delivered them.
So the big thing that I put in my quotes, it's hard to do it if you already have the thing, is that we keep the footage for 30 days. Now we might keep it for longer, but we usually tell them we're going to deliver you all the footage. And then we, from our perspective, now some clients we have to destroy it immediately. Like we destroy it right after the event. We deliver them all the files and then we pull it off our drives as a fiduciary. I mean, like we have to do that. But for other things that we do, we usually set up an agreement. It may seem like, I mean, I know that some folks have a different business model, but my business model is in the quote, it says, I will keep your footage on live event for 30 days. Then I will deliver you all the footage that you want. And then I don't have anything to go back to. And I admit that I don't like doing post. so I prefer to get it, finish the job and move it, push it off the cliff and move on to the next live event. Go ahead, Bill, and then Mickey.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as you move up to bigger and bigger clients, this process, I think, gets a little more complicated. And I'll tell you the story very quickly of a thing where I used to bill a third, and a third. And I think I got a $10,000 first third of a video project for a little corporate thing. I was working with a middle manager. Eventually got the word that they've killed the project. And I said, do you want me to refund that or do you want me to just hold it? And they said, hold it. So a while came by, that middle manager moved on. A new one came in, didn't even know about the stuff. So I talked to their boss and said, we've got this credit. Where do you want to use it? And 2 days later, I got a message that said, Merry Christmas. There is no way we can pull that back in because this department is different from that department. We don't want to cross-pollinate that. It is so complex to return money that you just gotta, and I'll send you a little email saying that was the deposit. We killed the project. The deposit is yours.
Now, what I will say that has been really successful for me is that money is, in our world, considered off the books. And so when someone's trying to figure out how to do something in that division, knowing that they've got a $10,000 credit that doesn't have to be billed, that doesn't have to be processed or whatever, you can keep it and that you just keep it. But what I do is I say, hey, you've got 10 grand. If you want to, if you need to do something, let us know. And we've definitely had the same
camera
issue.
For that next thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, you want that little thing that you can't get approval for, or you can't. It's such a great way to make friends. You want that little extra camera. You want us to shoot an extra day. You want us to, bring an extra person or have an extra whatever. You just let us know because you have some credit with us. And what that does is it helps build the relationship with the client, and it's a really great way to, add a little value. You always want them to feel as best you can that they got way more than they paid for. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, for us, like in terms of post, we definitely cost out. We add a little padding there just for the whole, how do you put it? Putting out fires budget, which inevitably happens in post sound because we are always the last step in the process. So we get a lot of situations where we have to put out fires. But in our production sound side of things, which is sort of a different model because on production sound, we make money with equipment rental. And for that, we send out rate cards, which has a basic ENG package with 2 wires or a reality package with 5 or 6 wires. And then everything on top of that in terms of gear rental is a la carte. So if you need an additional wire, it's this much. If you need an additional slate, it's this much, or time code boxes, this much. So they have, from the get-go, they have a clear idea of, okay, we're going to go for the small ENG package, but we just need 1 more wire. And they already have an idea right then and there how much it would cost.
So we're gonna go a little heavy into our concert discussion, but we're gonna do speed rounds. So like 30 seconds to a minute per answer. And this is a reminder to folks who go, oh, they're gonna answer my question really fast, or other people who are looking at it going, I was waiting for that question. You got to vote on these questions because the questions at the beginning get more attention than the questions in the speed round. So that's really a responsibility of the attendees to prioritize the questions. All right, next question. We're going to speed round real quick. Go ahead, Bill.
Keenan Campbell, Princeton, Illinois, best tripod for Blackmagic Camera 6K on a desk for optimal camera height.
Go ahead, Bill.
I've replaced my little tripod underneath the camera that I use for my teleprompter, and to do this 4 times trying to find one that was low enough. It's really hard to get really, really low camera tripods. It's a struggle.
I try to keep my tripod off my desk and behind it. And I'm using my go-to as a Mi Photo Q2. I just looked at it because that's what I have in the hotel here. So a Mi Photo Q2, what I like about it, it's got a nice center column. It breaks down and it'll fit in a carry-on, which is important to me. So if I take off the head, I can drop it into a carry-on and move it. And it's got a nice center column. It's carbon fiber. It's not cheap, but it's a great little guy. Let's do it real quick and then we'll move on.
Tripod head removed from tripod, sitting on a couple of boxes or a couple of phone books, assuming you can still find phone books.
Next, go, Brian, super fast, 15 seconds.
Yeah, super fast. Check out the Manfrotto 131 TC. It clamps to a desk. It's got a center column that's geared. You can raise it up and down 2 feet. It's pretty cool, and it's rock solid. That's what I'm using now.
Excellent. Next question.
Michael Patrick of Chicago now asks, I was just working on a shoot where we had a content on a flat screen behind the presenter. We noticed with certain images there was a slow moving line on the TV. How would you go about fixing this?
Scan line. It's a scan line. You want to lower your shutter speed. This is how you get rid of that. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we want to try to match up your shutter speed to a number that is the
less. It's the shutter. Your frame rate or shutter speed has to be less than the refresh rate of the monitor.
Yeah, exactly. A multiple of the refresh rate.
Right, but I think it can be. I don't think it can just be less. I think as long as it's less, it won't see it. But Bill and then Jason.
There used to be clear scan on Sony cameras to do exactly this. There are a couple of software tools that will allow you to kind of fake that with the new LCD screens.
Go ahead, Jason, and then Stuart, but 15 seconds each.
Buy a TriSync time code generator and plug some reference in.
If the monitor has that, but if it's a consumer monitor, it won't work. All right, Stuart.
I was only going to say exactly the same as Bill did.
Yeah. Next question.
Moving on, Salvatore of Montreal says, can you recommend a solution to video record an interview over the internet? I work for a university and we're recording many messages for students from professors and admins. Zoom only offers 360p recording.
So if you get a Zoom room, you'll get at least 720, and you can make a request to get it to 1080. With one point-to-point, you can't put more people in the room. So you call one person on the far end. If you made that request, then you should get 1080p out of that. I don't know if it'll record internally that way, but then we grab that screen with a recorder. And Courtney's shown ones that are as little as $80 or something. I still use a Pix 240 because it's really nice, and I just push the record. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, without the complication of Zoom Room, I would maybe just try to do a local recording on the other end and just send the video file.
Yeah, but again, if you want to record it on the far end, then Zoom Room's the easiest one. Also, business. If you pay for the business ones are a little more expensive actually. The Zoom Room's cheaper because the business one you have to have 10 licenses to do. Next question.
Jeff Francis, Columbia, South Carolina, in the panel. I want to find and pull hashtag pics from Instagram and Facebook and put them picture-in-picture into a YouTube live stream with the ability to pick and choose to remove inappropriate pics. Clever ideas from the panel. Note, I think, show us your ugly Christmas sweaters.
There are some
I can go back with this tomorrow.
Yeah, bring that back tomorrow because I don't have it right, and I don't have it right on my. Yeah, I want to dig into that one a little bit. Go, Guy, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah,
bring that
quick,
one back tomorrow.
Tagboard.com. I put it in the.
Next question.
Okay, Michael Rogers of Syracuse. What is a good paywall option for local regional musicians? Oh, that probably should have been held for the Daria session, you think?
Yeah, let's hang on to that one. Yep. Next.
Okay.
Are we through the non-concerts?
I don't think so. Angela Eisenman with Golden Bridges, New York, and I have to hang on a second. Let me cancel that.
We really fell behind. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
On my laptop, I don't see them as much, and usually I'm tightening up at about 8:40. Go ahead. Next question.
Next question from Angela Eiserman of Golden Bridge, New York. Anyone using SIP connections in Zoom? I've had to switch the host back and forth to have the SIP connection appear on the breakout menu to be able to move it to a breakout. Anyone else encounter this?
Their SIP connections are a little wonky. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. As a rule, SIP is just goofy, and it has to do with the way that Zoom has had to crank up security. And Cisco and the other SIP providers have just not kept up with their compliance. So yeah, just don't do it.
Well, you might have to, but yeah, just know that it's going to be some work there. If it's unstable, that's par for the course. Question.
Stuart Fairweather, Apple's M1 and the vertical integration. At what point does it trigger an antitrust or anti-competition investigation or ruling?
When Apple reaches 51% of the market, which will probably take some time. And antitrust is kind of a no-go. I mean, no one's going to go. You have to really prove that you're over 50% to 51% of the market before you even are in the ballpark. Go ahead, Jason. Apple right now is at 6.7%. So
yeah,
a long way to go.
it's so easy to forget just how little of a percentage of the global markets Apple has. So the answer is not going to happen. It would happen for an iPhone before it would happen for a Mac.
I mean, someone could get creative about the entire ecosystem that Apple's building and the fact that hardware, other pit folks are going to have a harder and harder time competing with it because Apple's finally taking full advantage of a totally vertical market. I mean, this makes, and so at some point there could be a creative case, I think, that could be made that they're locking up a huge percentage of really the viable market, because it's not just the market, it's who has money. People who buy iPhones tend to consume a lot more of everything than everybody else. And that starts to make the other businesses uncompetitive. Stephen, real quick.
Yeah, I figure if Apple was a car, it's BMW and Mercedes combined.
Yep.
That's their market share.
Yep. Next question.
Paul Wallace of Austin, Texas. Anyone check this out? Spatial Chat 2.0 is a virtual space for events and teams. Originally launched in April, the makers offered a Zoom alternative for teams of up to 50 to socialize in a more interactive space. Fast forward to yesterday, they launched version 2.0, which will allow users to host events.
I just have a hard time seeing the distinction between this and Zoom with breakout and other things like that which we're using. So I think it's for people who wanted to do this without Zoom. Like that's how the filter that I tend to look at it through, without all the features that I have. Jason, 15 seconds.
Yeah, this is in no way new. If anyone remembers, not Ventrilo, but TeamSpeak, the whole thing was designed to allow people to positionally, put lots of players in so everyone could shout at the same time. It's just a variation on a theme.
I guess I feel like it's really still that whole, like, how do we make physical virtual? And I just want to make virtual. Next question.
And the last one before we transfer, in a Zoom, can I pre-populate breakout rooms? For example, for a college orientation, I'd like to have all students in the main room for a presentation, then push them out into breakout rooms to meet in small groups with their advisor. Can I do that in advance?
Yep, Grant will be the right person to answer.
Yeah, so you can up to 200 people. You can do up to 50 rooms, but you can do only up to 200 people. You can and you do it in the web settings, and you can import a CSV file for that. But those email addresses need to be the email addresses that they logged in as. So it gets a little tricky there. It actually doesn't take that long to just assign people to rooms. You
got 200.
If you're doing a presentation, in the main room, you only need a few minutes to just drag everyone into the rooms. So you just do it at the start of the meeting.
Yep. Great. Now we're going to shift gears and we'll talk more about Zoom. This turned about the Zoom morning and then the concert morning, but I'm sure we can talk more about it tomorrow. Now we're going to shift gears. The reason I wanted to put this in here, and I'll only be here for a little while. I have to go to work, but and Daria's here. Daria, let's check your audio real quick because.
How you guys doing?
Oh, sounds much better. Sounds much better than.
I told you it would.
Excellent.
Great to see you guys.
Yeah, good to see you as well. It's so good to have you.
It's so good to be here. I was like, they're talking about concerts. You put up the bat signal. I was like, yoink, coming.
Daria is the OG of online concerts and building communities, and so it's so great to have you here, Daria. So
That's great to be here.
You're here to talk about
I'm excited because I nerd out about this stuff all the time. So now I get to talk to other people who are thinking about it, and it's exciting. So thank you.
One of the things that I've been dragged into, I've been in like 5 or 6 meetings in the last week with different people talking about how do we do shows at our venues? How do we do how do people do shows? What should artists be thinking about? And so I thought that it'd be worth not really having an interview anywhere, just having a general discussion about what people are thinking, what people are doing, in this area. I personally think that artists could go further online than they did in person. So I know that a lot of artists are trying to figure out how do I get back to playing gigs and everything else. I think you want to play gigs, but I also think that that you want to think about, and I think Daria again has been blazed a lot of this for us. One of the things that I learned a lot about from Daria, what was successful that we've used a lot, and you've seen us use it here when we had Brian Vander Ark on, we had Peter Hillman on, we had Daria on. It's a lot of discussion. Don't use up your whole, what people want to do is they want, in a live environment, they want to get to know the band. They want to get to know the artist. It's less in the music they can go listen to on Spotify. Like they can, they can listen to that, and hearing that live version of it, I think is exciting. But I think that what people are really wanting is to feel like they're part of that community, part of that community that's related to that artist. I'll let Daria kick off some of the stuff what are you doing now? Like what are some of the tools that you're using? And then we'll jump in. If you have comments, questions, so on and so forth, start putting them in now. And we'll start jumping to them here in a second. So definitely put them in Okana, and we'll keep on talking through those. Go ahead, Daria.
Yeah, it's an interesting and exciting time. I know I've been feeling the same as you, where I'm watching what other artists are doing. I'm going, oh, they're finally catching up to the stuff that we were kind of doing in a really duct taped together way years ago. And so it's exciting to watch other artists start to discover the joy of, you can play a world tour in one night without going anywhere and stuff like that. But I think that I agree with you that the thing that most people, to me, seem to still be missing is this sense of, the coolest part for me about playing online, and the thing that like kind of made my career take off, and by the way, Ram is here too, and he's the man behind the scenes and also on the camera with all of this stuff, is that interaction with the audience. And I see so many artists and like you were saying, venues and people trying to figure out how do we bring back what we know and what we're comfortable with. They're missing the thing that was the ultimate game changer for me, which was now, instead of being on a stage where the audience is far away and the room is dark and there's no interaction between you, and whether you're a huge star and they're really far away, you have no interaction except the cheering, or like where I was years ago, where it was like you're in a crappy cafe and nobody's paying attention or whatever it is, but there's this gap between you guys. That gap completely evaporates online if you want it to. And now all of a sudden you can have this back and forth, and whether it's face to face or through comments or whatever, if you give a little bit of thought to the interaction between you and the audience, this whole other animal happens. It's not a regular concert. I agree with you 100%. Let virtual be virtual. Let, IRL, in real life concerts be that thing, because it's a beautiful thing, but it's different. And so I think that's the big missed opportunity here, of what people aren't quite seeing yet, is how much fun that is to play with. And as an artist, you're creative, you're artistic, you can take that opportunity and shape it in different ways. For me, it's a lot of talking. It's a lot of talking with people. And especially, like, I've been thinking lately about how do I bring back that sort of original thing I was doing. Back then it was in Google Hangouts. Zoom is the most similar thing right now, where I actually get to see people face to face and sing for them when I didn't know them and they were total strangers, and there was a big element of kind of risk in it, but it was thrilling. And for me, that was like opening a present. Every new person I got to meet would like make me think of a song, or we'd write a song on the spot. And it was just, it's like a crazy thrill to, have it be morning where you are in the middle of the night where someone else is, and the sun rising's over there and somewhere else. And it's a thrill. But there are other cool things that are going on technologically with the biggest stars that you see right now. And I actually came like packed with stats for you guys, because I thought there were some really cool things, like to kick off maybe the next bit of conversation. Where my head's been at, because this is how I think, is like, how do we make this accessible and awesome for artists at every level? But some artists that are at the top, who have millions of dollars to play with and millions of fans to play with, are starting to get a little more creative. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Wave VR. We can talk about them, but also what Fortnite's been doing, having big stars come and play kind of like virtual Second Life style concerts inside of the game, and all the people come with their avatars like in the game and watch a concert. So here's some crazy stuff. So Travis Scott did one of those. So 2018, 2019, Travis Scott played his Astro World Tour. It was 58 live shows, 4 months of travel. He played for 850,000 fans live, and the tour grossed $64 million. Travis Scott then this year did a Fortnite concert where he was like this giant Travis Scott. 4 virtual shows over 1 weekend, no travel, played for 28 million fans, and it grossed $20 million. So I think people are going to start thinking differently about what's possible. So I could just ramble about this forever. So let's talk about it, but it's exciting.
Yeah. I mean, but to what you're pointing to is, that's what I'm talking about, which is, and Daria, we have a request to have you move your mic down just a little bit. We're it's a little hot.
No problem. Here, I got you.
Is that I think that artists, large and small, when they figure this stuff out, are going to realize that they could make more money at home than they were on tour. And the tour, as we know, is, I mean, I used to work with bands on tour, and it's a soul-sucking experience after the first couple. There's like a handful, but you watch these bands that you're on the tail end of a tour going through your town, and my job was to drive them around and take them to interviews and stuff like that. And so you could just tell if they're at the beginning of the tour, they're kind of excited. They get to go out and play. They're working out. By about the fifth or sixth show, it was a job, and some of them really got into it, but it really tore them up. You get into the 35th to 40th show, and they just look like, between shows, they're just on life support, and so the thing is, but they had to do it because that's how you make money, and so when bands, and I think that one of the people that, someday we'll try to get on as an interview is Amanda Palmer, because she's cracked the code. Like, she's completely cracked the code. She started it all. She has a whole social network that has nothing to do with anything other than her, doing her thing. She's got 15,000 Patreon members, and they're just kind of doing her thing. And she's completely figured that out. And I think that folks like you, Daria, and other people like that are also cracking this code where it makes sense. Daria, Amanda, a couple other people. I think Brian Vander Ark is a good example of someone who's, is doing lots of shows, and he's figured out a model that works. And I think that we're going to see more of that, where you don't have to go anywhere, and you could build something that's reasonably good. And, I'm working on stuff that's like super high end, surround sound and HDR, distribution. And we're figuring out, how do we do that from someone's house? How do we, there's the technology is not that complicated for us to do that. And so there's a lot that we could do. And the thing is that for the online audience, you can be much more personal, because you don't have the rest of the audience there. Like when we're setting up cameras right now for something, and without the audience, you put the cameras wherever you want, and you can have this really but the moment we talk to artists all the time, like, oh, I want to have a small audience. I'm like, that'll destroy the online audience's experience, like, immediately.
Thank you. See, I know you understand this because we did this together, like, all over the world, and people would always say that, like, oh, but should we have, like, 20 people in front of you, like, on beanbag chairs? And we were together for the Times Square one that I did, right? And we tried it because I was like, let's try it. And all of a sudden, my attention was divided. As a performer, it's my job to be there for you. And now I had two different groups of people that I had to be there for. And it was a really tricky show to juggle in that way. But I think that you're right, that when it's just you and the camera, that intimacy feels one-on-one, but it scales, and it can scale across millions of people. And I think that's that magic.
Yeah, and I think this gallery view is a big piece of what makes it work, in my opinion. Like, to a dead camera with no one there, it's hard.
Oh,
the gallery view for me has been, for some of the artists that we've worked with and some of the other stuff, of having 25 or 49 or two monitors of 49 each, or whatever it is, having a bunch of people that are there. You don't need to see the whole audience, but it is nice to see enough of them that you can work off of, and one of the things we've been really thinking about is layers, so you have, I don't want to have anybody in the room except for the band, but the super fans are going into the Zoom room, and then the next layer of fans are watching on either pay-per-view or YouTube or whatever. And then there's another layer where we're streaming audio, and they're just listening to it, and they're part of that process because that's more convenient for them. So the point is that you can kind of layer those fans out where, to the level that they want to pay, or the level that they're committed to. We've had ones where everyone had to answer questions about the band. It was kind of fun. And to end up in the Zoom room, you had to prove that we stole that.
Oh, that's cute.
We stole that from the police, actually. The police, the rumor is I think it was their last concert before the new tour. There was a Canadian radio station, and there was a bar with like 700 capacity of 700, and you had to answer all, like, what is Sting's real name and what is all this other stuff. And I guess they said that for half the band, for half the concert, you couldn't band because everyone knew every word of every song, and it was supposed to be. I heard it was the most amazing concert experience ever. Because they said there was something crazy about not being able to hear the band when everyone's singing so lonely by themselves, like together. So anyway, So anyway, I have to peel out to go because I got to make sure that I turn this other thing on. So I'm gonna hand it off to Bill, but Grant, and then Jason, and then I'll listen. I'm really fascinated by this conversation. So we'll talk about.
Okay,
We're
well,
going
we have
about
to
this
talk
more.
offline because we have more to talk about this. Yes,
Absolutely.
okay.
All right.
Love you.
Take care.
Okay, moving right along. Grant Jason. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, we've had a few conversations with some big sort of band promoters and things, and the interesting thing is that for them, there's a big mind shift that still lots of people still needs to happen, because they're thinking, okay, what can we do in the meantime until we can go back to what we know? And so then it's like, okay, well, we're just going to do some sort of concert online, and that'll do. And I guess we can charge like $20 or something. And I'm like, hang on a second, you've completely, you're creating a second-rate experience. And so you're already telling them that it's going to be an ordinary experience, and like, oh, we're really sorry. You're kind of going into the event apologetic about it, not, oh, I know we'd love to be in person, and so you're positioning it all wrong. And so I'm having these conversations saying, hang on, this is a possibility to do something that is unlike anything else. It's an experience that no one has experienced with the band before. And so when it's positioned like that, it's now, okay, this is completely unique. And the way that so particularly for a band, a full band, trying to have a stage experience while still having that intimate interaction with the audience is tricky, but I think it's possible. And there's extra things that can be done, like green room access, or like those VIPs. There could be a whole bunch of them that are all in Zoom, and they get that Wayne's World VIP experience, backstage experience, as well as on stage. And the idea of having some gallery views that are nearby on the front of stages and things, where there's those 50 people, there's 49 people could be like, they know that they're going to have at one point in the concert, they're going to speak, and they're going to be able to ask a question, or they're going to be able to do something. There's something there. But I think we keep talking about, like Alex is saying about Spotify, and they're able to listen to the music potentially better. So how can it be more unique if there's something about the experience that is completely not just unique but dynamic in that live environment, so that it's not, you don't get the same feeling watching it on demand. There's something about it happening right now, and that the audience actually changed the content. They said, can you play this song but do it in a country style, or can you, whatever it is, right? It's like, can you play this song backwards? It's just like the idea of the audience really engaging and being a part of that show.
Or do you think about that when you're doing this? Do you think, like when Eric Clapton flipped Layla from a rock anthem gigantic thing into a shuffle, that kind of opened up that song to a whole new generation of people, I think. Do you see that happening? Do you change your songs? Are you interested in changing how you present them based on this intimacy?
Were you asking me?
Yes.
That's an interesting question. I think that personally, as an artist, when the moment inspires that kind of thing, it's really lovely. You actually have to do a lot of prep work if you want to be ready to like have your audience jump you through hoops, which is a different kind of thing. But there are people who love that and who that's actually their style. There's a guy, oh God, what's the guy's name? The live streaming loop guy on YouTube. I'll find it for you. I'll tell you guys in a minute. There's a guy I love on YouTube whose whole thing is live streaming, and he takes questions like an old timey radio show through the phone while he's live streaming on YouTube, and people give him a word and he just creates a song live. So it depends on what kind of artist you are, but there's all sorts of wonderful things. Sometimes we would end up writing a song on the fly,
Exactly.
but it would because someone inspired us in the moment, but we've never like set out to do that. But that's just because
that's the magic
us.
that he just touched on, though, that the actual show becomes an event kind of created by the audience and the artist. So we ended up doing something, we were doing it on Google Plus, and we ended up writing a song about the experience because it was a beta thing and everybody was getting into it. And then that became sort of an anthem for the shows and all that stuff going on. And
It
sometimes
was really because we ran out of songs, though, because we'd been singing for 6.5 hours straight.
But the other thing that was interesting is that every once in a while somebody would have a story that they would tell you, and you would all of a
They
sudden
ended up in the lyrics a lot, actually.
in the lyrics, but
Yeah.
also for the other people to start to know that person, and then those people would get to know one another. So you had an
Yeah.
interesting thing where it was really a personal shared experience, not just, hey, look at what I can do, and
Yeah.
pay
About
me.
connection as much
the
as
fun.
performance.
Exactly. And you find your own, as an artist, you find your own way into that. So I just remembered the guy on YouTube is named Mark Rebier. He's absolutely brilliant and completely hilarious. He's really worth checking out.
A little
So-
X-rated, but
Right, that's true. He's a little naughty, but he's
Let's
really
get
fun.
a link for the spelling into the link so that
Yeah,
people
it's
can
like
find
spelled like French, like Rebier with a T. There's that, and then another thing that I've seen recently that I loved was I don't know if you guys know the band Johnny Swim. They're this beautiful married couple who are like a kind of neo-Americana folk act, and they've been on Instagram doing something called Songs with Strangers, where they will pick one person off of their Instagram and hang out with them and learn their story, and over the course of a day, they will work on the song. They'll stay on live all day, write the song about this person's life, record the song, and release it. And they've only done it a couple times because obviously that's a huge undertaking, but the results were heartbreakingly beautiful. So I think it's really exciting when you see stuff like that, when you see people go the next step and really want to connect. And I think that's what you see maybe at this slightly one tier down from superstar, is this willingness to engage and to be excited and to be creative. And then I think there's something that you see sometimes with people that maybe have bigger teams or major labels, and it's like, oh no, we're so scared about how much money we're losing right now. How do we just make some money back? And it ends up being a little less thoughtful. Like I bought a ticket for the Billie Eilish live stream that she did, and it was actually really cool because she was on a big kind of VR stage, and they did this beautiful sort of staging thing. And so that I think was a good example of a bigger star trying to do something cool, but no engagement. Because how do you engage at that point? You know? Yeah.
Makes sense. Jason has had his hand up for a long time. Go, Jason.
Oh man, my shoulder's cramped.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, I told you I was excited about this.
Oh, no, it's all good. I just had a thought, like maybe 3 topics ago, which was I have this running suspicion that the people who think that a small, intimate audience, first, they're in love with Nirvana Unplugged MTV, like early 90s. And 2, the technical directors that are incapable of shooting a live show without cutaways and crowd reactions. So they're actually not modeling for the audience. They're modeling for their shot rhythm instead of, and that's to
brilliant.
me, it's the other way around. You're shooting the show. You're not shooting the audience. It's a lazy way to do it. Oh, by the way, I loved your TED Talk. That kind of captured the zeitgeist way back
Thank you so
when.
much. That's so sweet of you. Thank you so much. And I'm going to let you all talk, but just so you know, I have at least 2 more really dope examples of what people have been doing that I can tell you about.
Okay, let's cover 1 or 2 more people. Sky's had his hand up, and so has Victor. So let's do those 2, and then we'll get back to you for the next.
Okay, that you are here just makes my heart swell. Music is up. I love you too, sweetie. You are awesome in the energy, the drive, but the word whimsy comes to mind. Are you ready for a challenge? Are you ready? Are you ready?
Always.
You got a guitar right behind you.
Yes, that one definitely needs to be plugged in, but I have acoustics over there. What's
well,
up?
I'm just saying, right now, in this moment, in a liminal experience, what could you do with whimsy and office hours?
Okay, you guys talk for a minute. I'm going to grab a guitar.
Well, but I'm worried because I'll go to Victor, but Victor wants your attention too. So
of course.
Agreed.
We'll sneak it in at the end. I got my eye on the clock. Ram and I will figure something out.
Thank you, Daria. Fabulous.
Lovely.
Victor,
And again, so great to hear.
You understand me too well. I'm total ham. This is not good.
Okay.
I can't turn down a request.
Thanks, Daria. It's great to have you here again and to get your perspective as you've been doing this for so long. As you probably know or may not know, I've started to do this with my little sax jams that I do, and I've brought them in.
Gorgeous.
Oh, thanks. I brought them into Zoom because of the purpose that I wanted the engagement, that I missed that, one-on-one, and it's working out pretty well. People are at first shy, but you've got to let them know who you are, and then they seem to open up. Just this last Sunday, I was doing a song where I was going to feature my dad. I wrote it for my dad, and I kind of broke down, but it was like, whatever, it was real, and people reacted to it. So one of the things that I can grow from, like where I'm going to take my show early next year, is start bringing in some guest artists. Hint, hint, and having them perform as well on the show, so that I'm doing my stuff. But once a month, I'm going to bring in some new artists so that we can share, some audiences, and that we can grow the experience of having audiences that are desperate, maybe they don't know jazz, they're country artists. So, and that's what I'm going to do to try to build up the brand of a Sunday Jam that is more than just about me. So I'm glad that the opportunities are there. I know we're going to talk in a little bit. There's a new on Zoom program where you can charge prices, you can make tickets, and they're going to feature artists as well. So that is one that I just joined and got approved for. And so, Daria, might be something that's right up your alley.
Yeah, definitely send me a link to that.
Nice segue, Victor, because our first question from the crowd is Michael Rogers in Syracuse said, what's a good paywall option for local and regional musicians? So can we start the conversation about how people sustain themselves in this new model? Oops, anybody?
Well, I will mention the on Zoom, and they're calling it a marketplace, and you can have a cooking show, it's entertainment, education, family, and you can create these tickets that are either free. So if you're trying to just get going, or you can just set whatever price or a combination of the two, and Zoom itself is promoting this. So it's content on Zoom that is being promoted as a way for people to either free or to monetize. It's fairly new. There's a very simple process to get approved, but that is certainly one that I'm looking at for future engagement and potential monetization down the road.
Okay, and Jeffrey Powers, and people are coming in a little bit hot, so I know everybody's excited to have Daria here, but just watch your levels a little bit. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So I work with a lot of local musicians and trying to want to get on, and yeah, wow, the numbers are just super hot on that thing. Anyway, I'll back up a little bit. So they're working on it, but they just don't want to get into Zoom. All they've got for a device to get onto things is usually their phone. And so they set up their phone. Some of them venture a little bit farther, get like an external microphone for their phone and plug that in. But if they can't do it on their phone, they're not going to be dragging down their laptops and set it up. There are some people that are venturing out a little bit farther, but bringing out their laptops using something like OBS or something like that. But it's really about what they feel that they can handle. And I think something like Zoom, I try to teach them Zoom, but they get overwhelmed sometimes, and they know they want to use the technology, but they need to have their hands held. And being one person doing everything type things, it's really tough to get that learning curve out there for them.
And Michael Rogers asked that question. He also had a follow-up with a little extra. And is it possible to play without copyright shut off? I know Michael had his hand raised. So Michael, is that what you wanted to talk about, or was there something else?
Yeah, I'm actually working with several groups, and I carry 6 cameras into a shoot for these people, and I'm shooting in 4K. And we're looking at doing some live performance out of what are now closed down nightclubs in the central New York area. So we're not going to have audience at all, but we're able to get into the facilities. And what we're looking to do is to be able to provide a way to monetize for the groups, because obviously I can't pay them to do this. I've looked at a couple of things out there called Connect Club and Go Passage, which are event type softwares that apparently put a paywall between you and your streaming location. But Facebook for the longest time during the virus was letting everybody stream anything, but then all of a sudden a month or so ago they cut off, for the most part, playing copyrighted music that's not your own. Even when I do high school, college graduations, I can't start the stream until after Pomp and Circumstance plays. But, once we're trying to figure out a way to make this work for the local regional musicians that are willing to play to a no audience room. And to Darla's point, I absolutely agree that the screens with the people on them are great, but obviously the fidelity in Zoom is not the fidelity that you get using RMTP streaming. There's a cutoff. And so, for a full band, I've heard a couple of them sound really good. We've made a couple of really good broadcasts, but they've been live and, very short. So I'm looking for platforms. I'm looking for paywalls. I'm looking for ways to make this work for a lot of groups that are willing to play without a live audience.
Okay, Jeffrey has his hand up for a while, then Victor after that. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I've talked about this before. It's a website called Street Jelly, and I got it right here. Basically, what it is a quality live streaming platform. They've been around way before the pandemic, so they've been doing this for a while. I've been on Street Jelly with some of my solo work, and I have a few friends on here that do that. So basically, what happens is you set up just like you would set up for a Facebook Live or something like that. You would do your show, whether you can't use recorded backing tracks to it. It's got to be your music. You can loop it. You can use devices to make it sound more. You can bring in a full band, but you can't use backing tracks. When you're done, what you do is you put down the list of the songs that are covered songs. And then you put down the timestamps on that. And that's where they're going to do the whole verification process. It does not go down for copyright. And then how you get paid is through what's called a coin system. So people buy coins and they throw you tip coins as they go. And I've seen celebrity artists show up on this site and throw down $1,000 onto a musician and just to make their night. So it's been fun and it's great for some musicians. It's lower key and it's something to give that a try.
I'm kind of interested in this intersection between the business and the legal part, because we've got copyright and a whole bunch of things that kind of go along with this. And I'm wondering, particularly Daria, if you have any comments on, are you doing contracts? Are you seeing, when you're talking about bigger shows, are they able to change the contract terms and the writers and the rights management and all the rest of that in relation to this new wild west of streaming? Or are they just trying to slap you or other artists into the same writers and contracts with a few changes? Is this being reinvented?
It's interesting. It should be. I think that you describe it correctly when you call it the Wild Wild West. It felt like that back when I just first started. And I have to tell you, back then, Alex would know, and Ram definitely knows, I was like looking over my shoulder all the time, being like, everyone's right behind me, right? Like everyone's going to start doing this, right? And now it's 8 years later. And I'm like, oh, you guys took a minute. Like, hi. So it's interesting. I love when people start to learn about the hairy, behind the scenes of what goes on with music, because it is so complicated and so strange. I am personally, I declare myself as unlabeled. That's actually the name of our production company. I've never been on a label. There's a lot I don't know because I haven't luckily been through the ringer with that stuff, but I have friends who have. It's just really weird right now. People are trying to figure out what to do. Everybody keeps changing the rules. I'm sure everybody saw, Facebook recently sent out a thing being like, wait, never mind, you're not allowed. And you can do this and you can do that. So as a newer artist, it's been our approach to just play our own music as much as possible, because that's what we want to do anyway. And when we interpret stuff, it usually sounds so different that I don't even know that the computers would be able to pick up on what we're doing. But if I'm not mistaken, YouTube, their rules right now are, if we realize you're doing a cover, I don't think that they demonetize your stream, and I don't think they end your stream. I think it's the rules that apply to cover videos, which I actually like, which is that you get to still have a piece of your monetization, and then a piece of the monetization goes to the person who owns the copyright on the song. So in that way, it's kind of cool, because if you're covering somebody that you love, you're actually contributing to their world as well. So if that's the case on live streams, which I think it is, I think that's probably the best way to do it. I don't like the idea that people are just cutting people's streams off. That's obviously not sustainable. But I think, like everything, you find that the people you think that know what's going on and who are running the behind the scenes world of the music industry often don't really have their stuff together and are kind of making it up as they go. My hope is always that people think about the artists first and think about how this could be, useful and beneficial for artists. Big artists whose songs you're covering should absolutely be getting paid for that, and little artists who are trying to get up should be able to make a living off of what they do. That's the stuff that keeps my gears turning like all day and all night. So I don't think they're there yet, but hopefully they're thinking about it.
Ram, do you have any comments on that before we go to Victor to get his thoughts?
Well, my comment would be on what somebody said earlier about the quality of the video in the trying to set up a live stream and have the screens for the musicians to watch. The one thing I found interesting
I think he was asking you about copyrights and about this topic.
Yeah, I know, but I'm going back because I think it's important that because we're gearheads, we think everything always has to be excellent. And what actually has to be excellent is the content. And when we were first doing it, we thought people were hearing what we heard. Like I ran the whole show through my mixing board, and I had headphones, and it sounded as best as we could sound.
Yeah, we thought really.
And the people liked it, so we thought, wow, they like what we're doing. Well, then we got a bootleg copy of what we did.
Because somebody screen captured it.
And it was horrible. Yeah. It was all the music was ducked. Daria's voice sounded fine. You could understand her, but really
everything else was getting flushed down the toilet, through the codecs.
So we thought, why would anybody want to watch this? But what they were interested in was the content and the interaction. So then we started to do it live broadcast. We were on stage. We could see the audience, and all of a sudden, all the people who had seen us before came and said, God, you guys have gotten so much better. And what we realized is they actually hadn't even really heard the real stuff.
We just set a really low bar.
And most of the music we were playing wasn't available for them to listen to on recording. So they just got infatuated with her talent, but also the way that she would interact and make the show. Everybody felt like they were being seen. And that kind of opened our hearts up because we thought, wow, these people are they're in their bedroom.
Mine was in my bedroom.
In their living room, and they're totally comfortable. They don't have to be there. And then they would say something, or they would tell you a story, or they would say, they started to request songs that nobody knew, but if you knew our repertoire.
It's really funny because for a long time I felt like Wayne from Wayne's World, just broadcasting from the basement sort of. And I love this new era. I mean, obviously there's a lot I don't love about this new era, but the thing I love is that everybody's Wayne now. I don't know if you guys remember, there was an ESPN commercial a really long time ago where one of the older guys who's an ESPN commentator that everybody knows, it was he was doing his segment and then he was done. He said, okay, signing off. And then it panned out and he was in a metal rock band t-shirt and he had a long ponytail and he jumps on his bed and he's in a kid's bedroom and he goes, Mom, I'm done with my segment. And we always joke that that's me. That's basically it.
Well, I wonder if there's a virtual equivalent of having seen Springsteen in a dive bar in New Jersey, that those early adopters have that moment.
That's my point.
That's it.
Yeah, before it's all flash and glitter and millions of bucks.
And that's what drives. That's, I think, what drives it. It's the earlier, it's the people who they're not thinking about fame. They're not thinking about what's supposed to be. They're thinking about something that's happening now, that's new, that has evolution built in it, right? You can see where it's going.
Yeah. But if that original question was, how do people make money doing this and stuff too? I agree that there are not enough obvious answers to that. And I can tell you that that's something that I've been thinking a lot about. And I can't tell you everything I've been working on because most of it's still up here, but there's a lot that we've been thinking about this.
Okay, Victor has another question. Go ahead, Victor.
Well, just to Michael's question, a couple of things. First of all, I can certainly say that on Zoom, the high fidelity options have really brought up the game, and they're really super top, and I've had a lot of experience with it. And secondly, you said you were going to be doing these from nightclubs. If these nightclubs already have a relationship with BMI and ASCAP, you may want to have them ask those organizations if they can get an exclusion, because if those bars are paying already for those services, you may be able to get an exclusion so that you could then, write to YouTube and say, hey, we're good. These royalties are being paid by the venue where we are doing these performances for copy music. So those are my two thoughts.
I want to know if they virtualize the smell of stale spilled beer over months. That is an important component of these.
Yeah, we're looking for a way to bottle that.
Yeah, you can
Bad,
get that.
bad ashtray. Need a lot of bad ashtray.
Okay, A. Mitchell's in our next question from Washington. It says, how do people feel about live stream performances compared to streamed as live, such as what is done with the Premiere feature of YouTube? Performance levels versus interactivity levels versus integration and participant building, as well as cash flow building. We've kind of been touching all these things, but as anybody who works in the music space here, well, Daria has her hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, we don't get you that often, so
this hot take,
go for it.
I do not like it when people call those things live. It's not live. It's recorded. It's a video, and you're just playing it for people, and that's great, but it's not live, and you shouldn't say it because it's not fair, because it's not nearly as hard.
I got that. Okay, point taken, and we are moving on to Johnny Estias's question out of Manila. Let's see. He's successfully, albeit very painfully, used Jamkazam to broadcast a concert with 3 at-home musicians on a private Zoom. Has anyone else used Jamkazam? And is there any other viable alternative for that kind of thing? Jason, you're shaking your head. You have to explain yourself.
Okay. Yes, I have never heard of it, and I've been around since the stick cam era. So I'm sorry. Like, I have no idea.
Okay, fair enough. Then we're going to move on because nobody else has a hand up. And we're getting to A. Mitchell's of Washington. How do people feel about organically live performances versus more structured or smoothly produced performances? Is repeatability of well-known songs or albums worth more than the random magic of possible missed keys or other risks? Which do participants enjoy or are drawn to more? And how much is too much? That's an interesting thing. Stuart, you want to touch on this?
Think about it this way. How many bootlegs of the Beatles or Queen or those amazing bands are really bad recording quality? Those bootlegs change hands for thousands of dollars for collectors, whereas a regular CD, a crisp, clear recording is, buy it at the $2 shop. Right, it's the recordings that are made now of artists just straight up performing without all the backing are going to be the bootlegs in 20 years' time. Right, that's the things that are going to be valuable when people are looking back and going, what was it really like? There's your example.
Okay.
I totally agree. And from the artist side, I think too that it's just so much fun to see what can happen, you know? I was raised as like a very rigorous performer. My mom's a classically trained Juilliard flutist. So I was like raised with, really be ready to perform and not make a mistake. But man, when those things happen, when mistakes happen, when you crack up in the middle of a song, when that stuff happens, those end up being the things that you remember and the things that everybody remembers, I think.
Okay,
Bill, if I can reiterate one of Daria's points before, live is hard. Doing live TV, multi-camera direction, live to air broadcast with no delay is walking a tightrope.
Fair enough.
What we're doing here is easy comparison, and
it's
not
total
playing live
adrenaline rush.
Pre-recorded is, there's no rush. There's no rush there. When you're standing in a control room, there's no rush if it's coming off tape.
Okay, moving on to Jonas Dartel of Reutlingen. What do you think of the concept of using Zoom as a dance room to bring fans into the live stream? Note like Genius did for their live stream a few weeks ago. Interesting. So we're going to have a virtual mosh pit for certain artists? That should be
Bill,
kind
you
of
skipped
fun.
my question.
Did I skip your question?
Yeah.
How did I do that? Let me go back.
I don't know.
Oh, I do see Chris Comfort back here. I can't get it back, but I can read it off here. So let's address his and then we'll come back. So Chris Comfort said, for new viewers, can we recap some of the basics of live streaming performances, like using wired internet and not Wi-Fi? Playing with other band members is very difficult for distance. So
yeah, like the Jam Kazam thing that came up earlier. It's understanding the limits of the physics of speed of light and things like just explaining to people that you need to kind of be in the same building or in a very close proximity to each other to use things like Jam Kazam to play live, or like so many you know, I know with Daria, what she's talking about with those magic moments of live performance are great. What you don't want are like frozen screens from Wi-Fi dropouts and things like that. That's the kind of stuff you don't want. And that's the kind of stuff you'll lose audience members for even that performance or the next performance. And I think it goes back to what Alex always talks about. You know, you have to put out, you know, again, I don't want to argue with, you know, Daria and her partner about like, you know, not worrying so much about quality, but I think that we do have to address the fact that, you know, not wanting to see your friends crash and burn because of a technical glitch or whatever, and just not being able to watch that kind of thing.
Oh, Chris, I maybe I mischaracterized myself. What I agree with you completely. What I was talking about was being both musically and technologically prepared as much as possible, and then musically, if magical things happen, then that's great. But I cannot tell you the number of totally stressed out, freaked out tears I have shed, like moments before a live stream, moments after a live stream, because something broke. And just like always with live performance, it's a bit of a Murphy's Law, where you can do everything you can think of and something will still break. And that's when you need that extra muscle of like bravery and just going for it. But you gotta, absolutely, we've always tried to be meticulous about the tech end, and that's why we know guys like you, because you've saved our butts many times.
So if we can explain to the new audience members who may be watching this for the first time, like, you know, and Alex always talks about it, and we've always talked about it, Jason's talked about it, all these members over the past several months, the worst wired connection is better than the best Wi-Fi connection, for example. And just sharing some of these little nuggets of information for people who are watching, like I said, for the first time.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your top line thoughts. I mean, you guys are the people that I defer to on all things like this. I know when it comes to our breakdown of responsibilities, Ram handles most of the high-end audio stuff. I handle most of the high-end video stuff. I always prefer to have a beautiful camera and a beautiful lens and try to do that. And I have preferences about my microphone. He's the one handling how everything's going into a big studio with a big soundboard and all of that stuff.
Right, but I think, you know, what I was meaning about, if the technology hasn't caught up with what you're trying to do and it's spotty, that's what I meant. It's like working with it. Like people would work with the low video quality because people didn't have good video quality in broadcast.
Yeah, I think he meant not to stop yourself.
Oh, no, go for the best.
No.
But if you're, for instance, we've been trying to duct tape how to get into a phone, how to do all this other stuff, and who's actually making a product that has the quality. And, you know, the technology, it's not
easy yet.
It's not easy yet. Like people don't know how many cameras or how to set it up, or do they get an ATEM, or, you know.
A lot of people aren't sitting on a lot of gear too, which I think is the other thing that we try to be sensitive about when we talk to friends and audience members about these things. But you should mention the things that you think are the most important for artists to have.
You know, like I said, getting an Ethernet cable, and some people just balk against it. They're like, well, they see it as an annoyance.
Always Ethernet. Always, and if you can do it.
Yeah, because, you know, that $20 cable or that $30 cable, even if it's kind of run across the room and down the stairwell and into the other room, is much better than the Wi-Fi alternative. And I just want to emphasize that stuff for people who are, you know, and that's not a big expense.
And then once you get that cable, call your cable company and make sure you're getting the best level that you can in your area. We're in the middle of the woods, like in the middle of nowhere. And the amount of times we've called them and like, you are not delivering us what you said you would, you know, you have to stay on them because they'll cheat you out of some of those upload bits too.
And Chris, thank you so much for calling that out. I bobbled a button push, and that was an important discussion. So I'm really glad you brought it up. Thank you. Let's move on to Jonas Dattel, who we teased earlier. What do you think of the concept of using Zoom as a dance room to bring fans into the live stream, like Genius did for their live stream a few weeks ago? How do you gain audience interaction is probably the broader question in the midst of this moving to individual little pods broadcasting and listening? And let's go Stuart, then Jason.
Okay, just the way my mind works, I'm just thinking about those gamepad things that you spread out on the floor that you dance on. How would you integrate that into somebody at home being able to join in the dance that's being played on a screen in front of them?
I'd send them all twister pads. Jason?
Oh, get out of my head, Bill. That was perfect. Ugh. I was thinking that or a Nintendo Power Pad. That would just be epic.
Yeah.
Dance Dance Revolution. Yeah.
Dance
Dance
there
Dance
you go.
Revolution.
There you go. Can you synchronize that over the internet? That would be an awesome add-on
That would be
tool.
cool.
Okay. I think we played with that and had fun with it enough. Join us is back with
I'm going to copyright that idea now.
yeah, please don't. We should give that to the world. That is important, and it should be spread freely across all platforms. Would doing Dolby Atmos be a good way to offer a unique experience in what we're talking about? Jace?
Absolutely. If you have as much money as you need and, everybody just happens to have AirPods Pro and iPhones, then absolutely. I'd say not this year, not next year, but yeah, when it happens, it'll be cool.
Okay. So Jeff Francis and then Mickey.
Yeah, I don't think yet we don't have real-time rendering for Dolby Atmos. So doing actual live interactive events in Atmos isn't going to happen.
Okay. I was just reminded online that we're running short of time here, so try to make your answers as concise as possible. Michael Vosbean is where we're going next from Woodstock, Georgia, who says, I hate to bring it up, but the IP issue simply must be addressed for online performance. Private Zoom rooms have no mechanism for tracking and paying royalties. Zero. It's a non-starter for many serious musicians. Discuss, please. So does anybody see anything? I mean, you've also got the issue of the fact that in the U.S., we're all under Title 17 of the Copyright Act, which kind of controls all of this, but every country has its own sets of laws that are unique. And suddenly we're in this worldwide broadcast and distribution environment where I don't think those inter-country pacts have even come close to touching this new world. So I think it's, again, you're in the wild, wild west. Does anybody have any other thoughts? No? Okay, that's my 2 cents. It's a great question, and I'm sure it is going to be painful to have this worked out over the coming decade or so, but it's going to have to be worked out because it's a big, big deal. Michael Fisk of Spokane Valley says, trying to restore a Mac Pro to new on disk utility, the format tab is grayed out, therefore I can't erase the disk. This doesn't seem to be specifically music oriented, but Stuart, do you want to do it while I try to move over some other things that I missed?
Bulk eraser. And I'm just watching people's faces, and I can now tell the age of everyone. Yes, and Jason is thinking about how nasty that would be to a hardware.
Go, Jason, really quickly, and let's move on.
Okay, talk about a non sequitur. Okay, I'll answer your question. Boot into Internet Restore mode, and you'll be able to force dismount your partitions and download the newest version of macOS straight from the internet. But it won't do that. It'll download the version of the macOS that you had when you got that Mac. So have fun with that nice little stair step that you're going to have to do on the way back.
This IT interlude was brought to you by no sponsor at all. Now we return to our regular program already in progress. Stuart Fairweather of Melbourne says the hesitation by promoters to pivot to a new model is that something being seen with older management or just larger companies? Are the youth adapting to the new performance platforms faster? And from that, are there new business models to exploit as the viewers or buyers move away from the older formats? And that's feel free to skip the schedule. That's time limits. Who wants to attack this idea of how promoters are seeing this? Raphael.
Well, the one thing is that the younger ones, which are not under contract, can probably do whatever they want. So they could say register. They could say like build up a website to register and build a list of people that are able to access the Zoom conference or something. The promoters, they are mostly into either like large companies, say like those big AA companies, and these people have huge amount of money invested in production systems and tour companies also. Because you can see, sometimes you can see that the music major or something has some investment in some tour companies, and they charge the artist for that, for the tour.
So size and agility are often in conflict.
So yeah, exactly. Size and agility are often in conflict, and it doesn't work well.
So maybe as a young agile artist, you have opportunities here that you might not have had in another era.
Exactly.
We're going to keep moving along because we've got 4 more to go and we're in the last minute or so. Benjamin, who's normally here on the panel from high school, looking at real-time audio performances, has anybody experimented with Jacktrip, Sonobus, or similar software for live virtual events? Anybody have any experience? I've never heard of either of those, but I'm not in this space most of the time. So I guess the answer is no. So sorry, Benjamin. Oh, Jeff, did you look it up real quick?
I've used Jamulus and I've used Jamkazam. I've not dove into Jacktrip yet. I found them to be pretty disappointing as far as interactive music. They're all working to get better and better. I think adding that onto a live virtual event will certainly bring people to be there to watch the train wreck, if nothing else.
Do these names come from Mad Libs? Like, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, who's doing? They're not paying for naming research people, I would guess.
Jacktrip is the open source, and then Aloha by Elk is another name that's using Jacktrip and building a product that removes your computer, so your audio interface plugs directly into Ethernet to try to reduce latency of your computer. It obviously doesn't reduce internet latency. So it's getting better and better.
Oh, excuse me. I'm going to try to get not too far into the 9 o'clock hour. Jim E. in Louisville says, how do you see VR impacting the performance venue? Daria and Ram, are you happy with 14 cameras around you virtually watching every single thing you do from every angle?
I think that'd be totally dope. We haven't done that yet. We're a little lower level production, especially during the pandemic. We're in this room, but Wave VR are the people that have been doing that on a big scale with like some big artists, and it is really fun to see people go like full virtual avatar. Like I want to be some sort of singing goddess on a giant like lotus flower or something. That'd be awesome.
I'll buy a ticket for that.
Yeah, and actually, before we run out of time, I just wanted to put a cool thing in